The night before making things official with my dream guy, I walked out of the bathroom toweling my hair when he stared at my nightgown for 3 seconds. "Are you pregnant?" "How is that possible?" I waved dismissively. My last ex and I barely held hands before we broke up. I'll admit it, I'm a player. A heartbreaker. Unlike those great literary works where every heartbreaker has some terrible man behind her story, I was just born this way. It's in my bones. Because my mom was the same. At 40-something, she could juggle 5 guys at once, from high-ranking officials to wealthy businessmen. She always carved out her own path among girls 20 years younger, wielding her mature woman's charm like a weapon. The student had surpassed the master. At my peak, I was seeing 7 guys simultaneously. My phone contacts had over 70 entries under the dead fish label, not counting the idiots I'd deleted and blocked in one swift motion. So yeah, playing men? I was an expert. But accidental pregnancy? I had 0 experience with that. It was completely foreign territory. Men came and went from my life frequently, but I'd always protected myself well. Plus, many of my exes seemed charming at first but became boring after a couple dates, so we'd break up before anything physical happened. I'd been living fast and free for 10 years, always walking by the river but never getting my shoes wet. Finding out I was pregnant scared the hell out of me. Unlike my colorful romantic history, Ethan was clean. Pure? Ethan came from a medical family. He'd had one girlfriend in high school, and they'd even reached the point of discussing marriage, but she died in an accident right before their wedding. He hadn't dated anyone since. To win him over, I'd washed away all my wild ways, disguised myself to be like his late girlfriend, and spent 6 months pursuing him before he finally said yes. The night we made it official, Ethan grabbed my wrist and checked my pulse. "Let's go to the hospital tomorrow." "You're about 2 months along." After taking my pulse, Ethan went to sleep with his back to me. I stared at the unopened box of condoms on the nightstand, my hand trembling as I reached for the light switch. Ethan's grandfather was a giant in traditional Chinese medicine. Ethan had learned from him since childhood before his parents pushed him toward Western medicine. During the 6 months I'd been chasing him, I'd found every excuse to have him check my pulse. He'd even prescribed herbs for my irregular periods. How could he be wrong about this? But I really had reformed. I'd been good. How could there suddenly be some random kid? Fear crept through me as I turned and hugged Ethan. His body tensed, seeming to struggle with something, but he eventually turned and held me back tightly. The hospital confirmed it the next day. Pregnant, just like Ethan said, 7 weeks. Almost 2 months. 0, 6. But for the past 6 months, I'd been completely focused on chasing Ethan. My love life had been cleaner than a nun's. I'd cut off all those questionable guys. So whose kid was this? Counting back 7 weeks, I'd been busy with work trips and conferences. I'd come home exhausted every night, sometimes so tired and drunk from business dinners that I'd pass out on the living room couch still in my heels. I barely had time to sleep, let alone sleep with anyone. Had I been drugged? Assaulted? How did I get pregnant? Where? And who was responsible? This sudden crisis left me sleepless for 2 nights straight. I never imagined I'd crash and burn on the very day Ethan and I became official. My first instinct was to call the police, but would they even believe me? And Ethan, would he believe me? That evening, I met Ethan for dinner. The atmosphere was oppressive and gloomy throughout. I didn't know how Ethan would handle this. Would he think I was promiscuous, fooling around with other men while pursuing him? In the past, he wouldn't have been wrong to think that. But only I knew how serious I'd been about Ethan. During dinner, Ethan didn't suggest breaking up or express any opinion about the baby. His ambiguous attitude terrified me. Ethan noticed my anxiety. On the drive home, he sighed and spoke up. About this baby. Hearing those words, I grabbed his sleeve and interrupted, my voice choking, "Ethan, I'll get an abortion. Please don't break up with me." At the red light, Ethan stopped the car and looked at me without saying a word. That silence made me panic. Those few dozen seconds felt like years. Then he reached out and touched my stomach. His gentle touch made my body go rigid with an inexplicable chill. I looked up at him through tears. Ethan's eyes were dark and deep, gazing intently as if seeing someone else through my pupils. I felt scared. He seemed different from his usual self. Looking again, Ethan had returned to being the gentle, polite gentleman in his white shirt. His features naturally lacked aggression, easily inspiring trust. He squeezed my cold hand, his voice warm, "Keep it. I'll raise the baby." I was stunned, my brain short-circuiting. Keep it? What the hell? The light turned green, and all the cars ahead had disappeared. A traffic cop was frantically waving at us like a broken lucky cat. I snapped back to reality and caught a glimpse of something dark in Ethan's eyes, darkness mixed with satisfied triumph. What was that about? Ethan seemed to notice my stare and looked at me again. Abortion is bad for your body. As a doctor, I don't recommend you abort. Before I could respond, Ethan continued, but pregnancy is, in a sense, exploitation of the mother's body. So whether to keep this baby should be your decision. I nearly cried from gratitude. These days, despite talk of gender equality and reproductive freedom, most men still had futile ideas about carrying on the family line. Too many good men only cared about the baby, treating their wives like breeding machines. Ethan was willing to put my reproductive choice first. In that moment, I only regretted not being able to catch that bastard who did this to me and tear him apart. "Julia, this isn't your fault." As we drove through complex traffic, Ethan glanced at me, his eyes tender and loving. Even with all my experience with men, I couldn't resist such a loving look. I lowered my head, feeling for the first time that my wild past made me unworthy of him. When Ethan dropped me off at my building, he called out, "Julia, let's get married." Ethan proposed even knowing I was carrying someone else's child. He didn't care about my past or the baby. He even defended me. I figured my ancestors' graves must be on fire, not just smoking, for me to meet someone like Ethan. For Ethan, for myself, I'd dig 3 feet deep if necessary to find that bastard who touched me. After getting home, I filed a police report. The officer came to understand the situation, then took me to the station to check my hotel records from 2 months ago. Nothing suspicious. They also pulled the entry records for my apartment building. Except for occasional dates with Ethan when he'd drop me off, no one else had entered my place. Ms. Reed, Doctor? Mitchell is the only person you've had contact with recently. Have you had relations with him? The officer asked, pointing to Ethan in the video. No, we were still getting to know each other. 2 months ago, I was still pursuing him. He had no reason to do something like that to me. Besides, he's a doctor. He's the one who told me I was pregnant. Do you have any suspects? No. With such a short time frame and no suspects, the investigation was difficult. The officer found no leads. It was late, so after giving my statement, I had to return home disappointed. Just as I got back, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Derek, my ex. Just a photo. It showed me at the restaurant earlier, serving food to Ethan. Seeing this message, my heart sank like ice water in summer, my mood plummeting. He was stalking me. Could it be him? I forced myself to stay calm and sent him with shaking hands. He replied quickly with a voice message only 3 seconds long. When I played it, the words hit me like a demonic curse. Derek said, "You look so happy." Damn psycho. Without hesitation, I was certain he was the one who assaulted me. I sank onto my bed, trembling as I tried to light a cigarette to calm down. How could it be Derek? When had he started following me? When had he drugged me? As the cigarette lit, I noticed the jade bracelet Ethan had given me. He'd said smoking was bad for my health. I'd hidden my smoking well around him, but once I came home from a business dinner smelling like cigarettes, and he'd noticed. Thinking of Ethan, I inexplicably put out the cigarette and went to the balcony on shaky legs, trying to calm myself. Stay cool. You're Julia Reed. You've always been the one playing others, never the other way around. My phone buzzed again. Derek had sent me a time and location. He wanted to meet. I exhaled heavily and violently smashed a potted plant on the balcony. Bastard. If he was the one who assaulted me, I'd tear him apart. Despite the late hour, I decided to meet Derek. I'd dealt with plenty of clingy exes, ones who sent me dead rats by mail, called at 3 a.m., or picked fights with my current boyfriends. But I wasn't afraid of them because I was shameless. When you have no shame, you're invincible. How could they intimidate me? I'd thought Derek was the easiest ex to break up with, but turns out he was a complete psycho. Even capable of assault. Sitting across from Derek, I looked at him coldly. What do you want to say? Honestly, Derek was decent looking, with a good family background. I'm shallow, none of my exes were ugly. I'd met Derek at a company event where he was representing a client. After we connected on social media, he pursued me. During the chase, he seemed like a sincere, innocent guy with a clean romantic history white as paper. I'd never dated that type before, so after he confessed twice, I agreed. But we broke up within a week of dating. We weren't compatible. A woman like me just wasn't suited for dating innocent boys. Derek needed to be taught everything besides his feelings for me. After a while, it became exhausting. Breaking up with Derek taught me an important lesson. Even when switching up my type, I needed someone at my level. Dating down was like cosplaying as a charity teacher in a romance education program. Then Ethan appeared and slapped me in the face with reality. Same refined, clean appearance, but Ethan didn't need teaching. Derek ordered me coffee, looking innocent and pitiful. I just wanted to see you. I lit a cigarette, expression cold. Don't you know that a good ex should learn how to die gracefully? Derek looked at me pitifully. I'm only 25. I don't want to die. I didn't want to waste time with small talk and laid my cards on the table. Derek, I'm pregnant. It was you, wasn't it? You've been stalking me and you assaulted me? Derek froze for several seconds. Then his expression returned to normal as he dropped his act. I wouldn't call it assault. Ha. If not assault, then what? Derek took a deep breath and grabbed my hand, seriously. Julia, since you're pregnant, let's get married. The same words, but coming from Derek's mouth, I felt no emotion, only nausea. I pulled my hand away, covered my mouth, and ran to the bathroom. I dry heaved for over 10 minutes. When I came out, Derek had already paid and left. Back home, I received a file from him, a personal introduction formatted as a PowerPoint presentation. Page after page of family financial statements, followed by family member introductions. This file was obviously prepared in advance. Too bad I had zero interest in his family situation. But since he'd sent such a complete background file, it saved me from investigating him myself. I'd previously had no suspects, but now I did. Once I found evidence of his assault, I'd send him to prison. I left the caf and took another taxi to the police station. The duty officer recognized me and looked surprised to see me return. Ms. Reed, did something happen? The officer thought I'd come back because I felt unsafe. No, I'm here to provide new leads. I gave the police Derek's information and personal details. Soon, they found some clues through surveillance. The investigation was shocking. Sure enough, Derek hadn't given up after our breakup. He'd rented an apartment across from my building. From his balcony, he could directly monitor my every move. No wonder he knew my every move. That pervert. I was shaking with rage. Ms. Read, don't be afraid. If Derek really assaulted you, he'll face criminal prosecution. Serious cases can result in 10 years or more in prison. I accepted the hot water the duty officer poured for me, feeling my cold hands warm slightly. Though they'd identified a suspect, police couldn't immediately summon Derek. They needed more evidence. The surveillance showed someone entering the rental unit, but the person was always dressed in black like a night prowler. They could see the body type was similar to Derek's, but couldn't definitively identify him. They scheduled to collect fingerprints from my apartment tomorrow to see if they could find evidence of Derek breaking in. Ms. Read, this type of criminal suspect usually has psychological issues. Once their crimes are exposed, I'm afraid they might take desperate measures. I suggest staying with friends for a few days, and it's best to have company when going out. I nodded. The first person I thought of staying with was Ethan. Leaving the station, I called Ethan. Julia? Ethan's voice was as warm as always. Ethan, can I come to your place now? I asked hesitantly. Now? Ethan sounded surprised, then said, Are you feeling unwell? No, I struggled to find words. Wait at home. It's not safe to take a taxi this late. I'll come get you. Hearing my hesitation, Ethan offered to pick me up. I'm not at home. Can you pick me up at Westside Police Station? The phone went quiet for several seconds before he slowly replied, Okay, wait for me. The duty officer, hearing Ethan was coming to get me, was impressed. Your boyfriend is really understanding. Most men would struggle to stay this calm when their girlfriend was mysteriously pregnant with someone else's child. I nodded. He's different from every other man in the world. He's the best. Half an hour later, Ethan's car appeared outside the police station. Dr. Mitchell, please take care of Ms. Read, the duty officer said, seeing me out and greeting Ethan. Ethan nodded politely. He'd obviously rushed out wearing pajamas and house slippers. I was touched again. This man, who always paid attention to his appearance, had ignored his clothing to rush over for me. His every action moved me. Back at Ethan's place, he found me pajamas and settled me in his bed. Though this wasn't my first time staying over, tonight felt more secure than ever before. Maybe because he'd proposed earlier that evening? After turning off the lights, I couldn't help but move to his arms. I don't want to marry you under these unclear circumstances, Ethan. I'll find that person and make him face justice, to clear my name. Hearing my words, Ethan just hummed softly and kissed my forehead, showing support for my decision. Though I'd lived wildly before, that was before meeting Ethan. I wanted to marry Ethan, and this matter had to be investigated thoroughly. I absolutely couldn't just take this lying down. Besides, I wasn't afraid of thieves stealing, but of thieves watching. If I didn't bring Derek to justice, who knew how long he'd continue spying on my life? What if he struck again? Could Ethan understand once, then understand every time? My biggest fear was Derek claiming we'd rekindled our romance and it was consensual. I wasn't some innocent girl or chaste woman. If this went to court, Derek would expose my entire past as his most powerful weapon. There were too many variables. So how could I deliver a killing blow? My thoughts were chaotic. I don't remember how I finally fell asleep. For the next few days, I stayed at Ethan's. To help me sleep peacefully, he specially bought aromatherapy candles to light each night. Police collected fingerprints from my apartment but found only mine, no second person's prints. Derek had come prepared. The leads went cold again. Actually, there was another way to confirm if Derek had assaulted me. The simplest, most brutal method: would be to abort the baby and compare the DNA directly with Derek's. I was certain it was Derek. After all, he'd practically admitted it that night. Damn, I should have recorded our conversation. Derek's abrupt departure that night without saying goodbye proved his guilt. He fled in panic. Fuck, I was so angry I missed that perfect opportunity to nail him. Ethan worked at the hospital during the day and rushed home to be with me every evening. He rarely asked about the case, as if afraid too many questions would make me overthink, but whenever possible, he'd personally drive me to the police station. The better Ethan treated me, the more determined I became to get to the bottom of this. Since I'd decided to spend my life with Ethan, I couldn't allow any trust issues between us. Since they couldn't get Derek's fingerprints, they'd have to approach it differently. Like surveillance footage of Derek entering my building. Or records of him purchasing illegal drugs in recent months. Days dragged on, and I started experiencing morning sickness, making me irritable daily. The severe morning sickness made me lose weight rapidly. I had to take time off work. I didn't want to pass my terrible mood to Ethan, so I tried to act normal around him. But I knew I was becoming increasingly anxious. The aromatherapy had limited effect. Every night, Ethan had to comfort me for a long time before I could fall asleep. Since sending me his personal background PowerPoint, Derek had vanished from my life. His marriage proposal that night seemed like a casual joke. According to police, he hadn't been to the apartment across from mine in a long time. The more he acted this way, the more unsatisfied I felt. A week passed like this, then the police station suddenly called. Miss Das. Read, I have a new lead that might require you to come in person. Hearing this, I was overjoyed. After hastily getting ready, I rushed to the station. However, the officer hesitantly asked, Does your boyfriend Dr. Mitchell know you dated Derek? I looked confused. No, I never mentioned it. Why? The officer sighed. Ms. Reed, according to our investigation, Dr. Mitchell's aunt is Derek's biological mother. They're cousins. Hearing this, I was thunderstruck, frozen in place. Ethan and Derek were cousins? How was that possible? This case might be more complex than you imagined. The officer handed me 2 files. This is information we've gathered. You can take a look. I couldn't believe what I was reading. One file showed Ethan's aunt was named Susan Mitchell, married to Raymond Walsh. The other was from Derek's PowerPoint, showing his mother was Susan Mitchell, father Raymond Walsh. My hands trembled uncontrollably. Could such a coincidence exist? Ethan and Derek were cousins? Did he know Derek had dated me? Or did he know what Derek had done to me, and was he marrying me to protect Derek? Even willing to raise the baby? This thought nearly made me collapse on the spot. Could this be a coincidence? I asked with a shaking voice, looking helplessly at the officer, hoping for some reassurance. The officer looked at me sympathetically and slowly shook his head. This is the result of our careful investigation. I clenched my fists, crumpling the documents, fury at being deceived making me slam the table before storming out of the station with the papers. I hailed a taxi, City General Hospital. I wanted to confront Ethan at the hospital. Why had he hidden this? Did he know what Derek did to me? Were his feelings for me real? What did these 2 brothers think I was? A fool? The taxi quickly reached the hospital entrance. Getting out, I looked up at the blazing sun, bit my pale lips, and suddenly felt cowardly. What if Ethan admitted it? Then what would I do? 0. 6. I loved him so much, genuinely wanted to marry him and spend my life with him. If all this was true, then he and I. Would it be over? That evening, when Ethan came home from work and found the lights off, thinking I wasn't home, he was about to call me when he saw my shoes by the door. He came to the bedroom looking confused. I sat curled up on the bed, hugging my knees. Hearing movement, I didn't react. Ethan turned on the bedroom light, saw my state, paused, then sat beside me with concern. What's wrong? I looked up at him with red eyes, saying nothing. What happened? Tell me. Ethan still had that gentle demeanor, his voice calm and reassuring. I bit my lip, staring at him for a long moment. Ethan, is there anything you're hiding from me? Ethan paused, then shook his head. His sincere, confused expression made me question everything I'd learned that day. Are you sure? I pressed. Ethan nodded firmly. I'm sure. His confident expression and tone made all my suspicions seem uncertain. Ethan truly might not know I'd dated Derek. When we first met, he'd said he didn't care how many boyfriends I'd had before. But everything that happened today made it hard to believe him. After staring at him for a while, I asked, Ethan, do you love me? Ethan didn't hesitate. Yes. Love me enough to accept my bastard child? You've never suspected I might be lying? Ethan met my gaze, and after a long pause said slowly, because it's you, I accept it. Julia, if you don't want this baby, I'll go with you to take care of it. My eyes reddened. Why change your mind now? Are you disgusted? Ethan shook his head. Because it's become your burden, your shackle. Yes, I'd been unable to sleep night after night, dreaming of tearing that bastard apart. You haven't been sleeping well lately. I didn't ask because I didn't want to add to your psychological burden. I'm not completely unbothered, but compared to the baby, I care more about you. You're the person I seriously want to spend my life with. My tears finally spilled over. Ethan gently wiped them away. Julia, let me take you to see a therapist, okay? Or I'll take time off, and we can travel somewhere to change your environment? I knelt on the bed and hugged his neck, burying my face in his shoulder, greedily breathing in his clean scent. The hospital's distinctive antiseptic smell made me feel safe. Forget it. Whether or not Ethan was really deceiving me, I wanted to be a fool this once. Derek was Derek. Ethan was Ethan. The man I loved was Ethan. He wasn't anyone's nephew or cousin. He was just Ethan. Somehow, after learning about Ethan and Derek's relationship, my heart actually calmed down. Following Ethan's suggestion, I saw a therapist. The therapist also recommended travel to change my environment and let myself decompress. They told me that even without abortion, paternity testing was possible. I didn't have to use a mutually destructive approach. Ethan took time off to accompany me to San Francisco. The night before we left, after packing and getting ready for bed, I caught a glimpse of my slightly protruding belly in the bathroom mirror and unconsciously touched it. Since getting pregnant, I'd never really observed my stomach. If Ethan hadn't pointed it out, I wouldn't have noticed the changes. My body was nurturing a life without my knowledge. The thought made me emotional again. If only this baby were Ethan's. This thought had appeared countless times since the officer carefully asked if I might be carrying Ethan's child. If it were Ethan's baby, there wouldn't be so many problems. Though he was willing to raise this child now, should I let Derek off the hook because of this? If this became public, would Ethan's parents still approve of our relationship? Realizing I was spiraling again, I shook my head and quickly showered. Returning to the bedroom without seeing Ethan, I found him on the balcony. I was about to approach when I was shocked to see Ethan smoking. He smoked? When did this start? How did I not know? Ethan turned and saw me, his dark eyes narrowing slightly before he put out the cigarette. This was my first time seeing Ethan smoke, and his squinting look was unlike anything I'd seen before. I approached with my hair towel. You smoke? Ethan's lips curved into a somewhat cold smile. I felt surprised. This version of Ethan was new to me. His gaze had always been gentle, but tonight it seemed somewhat aggressive. Ethan smiled slightly. Sometimes after surgery, when I have to work nights, I'll smoke one or two to stay alert. Why are you smoking tonight? He seemed in a bad mood tonight. Was it because of our trip tomorrow? Nothing much. I haven't had a vacation in years. Thinking back on my career made me a bit sentimental. I looked at him suspiciously, intuiting this wasn't the whole truth. But I couldn't read what he was thinking. The longer I knew this man, the more unfathomable he seemed. He appeared gentle and kind, treating people well, yet somehow felt unreal. Especially his relationship with Derek. Before, I'd thought his lack of interest in my dating history showed he didn't want to argue over unimportant people, just like I allowed him to keep a place in his heart for his late fiancée. But now I wondered if he didn't ask, because he already knew. That man smoking with his back to me, might that have been his true self with the mask dropped? What are you thinking about? I interrupted my thoughts and smiled casually. Nothing, just thought you looked different smoking. Ethan raised an eyebrow. Oh? I stood on tiptoe and whispered in his ear, kind of handsome. Kind of. Seductive. After saying this, I clearly felt Ethan's arm tense slightly. This reaction satisfied me. Ethan had always been gentlemanly and restrained around me, as if he had no physical needs. I'd thought that, as a doctor, seeing ugly human anatomy all day during surgery naturally suppressed his desires. That's why I'd never dared make any moves to seduce him. But his reaction suggested otherwise. This man did desire me. Ethan's dark eyes stared at me intently, his gaze deep. I swallowed, intimidated by the dangerous signals he was giving off, and hesitated, ready to retreat. But Ethan pulled me close by the waist and gave me a fierce, possessive kiss. This kiss was unlike any we'd shared before, full of aggression and ownership. I instinctively tried to struggle, but he pinned my hands behind my back, leaving me unable to move, completely at his mercy. When the kiss ended, I found myself weak-kneed, heart racing, eyes misty, and unable to see his face clearly. This man. How was he so skilled? Now it was Ethan's turn to look satisfied. Like he was admiring prey he'd already caught. Me, Julia Reed, had actually become someone's prey. Before I could recover from this role reversal, Ethan's expression returned to normal. He untied my hair towel. Let me dry your hair? I followed him in a daze, like a puppet, letting him dry my hair. We went to San Francisco for a relaxing trip, quietly walking the ancient city streets, absorbing its leisurely pace. After that kiss, he never did anything that seemed unusual again, making me wonder if I'd imagined it all during my hormone-induced confusion. I didn't mention or ask about it, but the doubts in my heart kept growing. Pregnancy made long walks tiring, so after an hour, Ethan and I sat on a bench while he went to buy snacks. I nodded, watching him walk toward a nearby food stand, again admiring his handsome silhouette. My phone interrupted my wandering thoughts. Looking down, I paused. It was the West Side Police Station. Had they found evidence against Derek? Ms. Reed, after investigating your neighborhood surveillance and Derek's activity patterns, we found someone did enter the rental unit on the 28th, but Derek was at a business event at a hotel about 20 kilometers from your place. I was confused. What? What does that mean? It means we suspect Derek might not be your assailant. Though this person has a similar build to Derek, our technical comparison shows this person is slightly taller. Also, Derek's usual behavior doesn't match the careful, methodical approach we see in the surveillance. My mind went blank. If not Derek, then who? My gaze fell on Ethan queuing for snacks, and an absurd thought flashed through my mind. Officer Chen, if I provided you with a silhouette, could you use technology to determine if two silhouettes belong to the same person? After several seconds of silence, the officer quietly said, "Yes." I licked my dry lips. I understand. Thank you for calling, Officer Chen. I'm out of town now. I need to think about this before contacting you again. All right. Hearing my hesitation, the officer sighed. Ms. Reed, take care of yourself. Don't let your emotions fluctuate too much." I mumbled agreement and hung up. Ethan returned with food and water. I could no longer maintain a normal expression, my face pale as I looked at Ethan like he was a stranger. Ethan approached, noticed something was wrong, and, assuming I felt unwell, dropped his purchases and looked concerned. "What's wrong?" "Are you feeling sick?" Ethan grabbed my cold hand to check my pulse, frowning. "You?" I coldly pulled my hand away. "Nothing. Just tired." "Let's go back." Faced with my sudden coldness, Ethan looked stunned. I couldn't face him calmly anymore and stood up, walking ahead. I wasn't stupid. After days together, I'd noticed Ethan's occasional odd behaviors, even if my infatuation had made me avoid investigating. Though unspoken, Officer Chen's hint was clear. Ethan was Derek's cousin. Ethan and Derek had similar builds, but Ethan was 2 centimeters taller. Knowing I was pregnant, Ethan immediately proposed and wanted me to keep the baby. And that night's possessive kiss. All evidence pointed to Ethan being completely different from the man I thought I knew. He wasn't some pure, restrained male god, but a master manipulator, a rapist. This conclusion nearly destroyed my ability to think. Lost in thought, I missed a step and was about to fall. Somehow, realizing I was falling, I didn't protect my face, but instinctively covered my stomach, protecting the baby. "Careful." Ethan caught my arm just in time. I steadied myself, looked at him once, then disgustedly shook off his hand. "Don't touch me." Ethan saw my undisguised revulsion, pressed his lips together, and didn't approach me again. My near fall had restored some rationality. I didn't act rashly again, slowing my pace as I walked ahead. Ethan didn't catch up to question or explain. I could feel him following at a distance. We returned to our inn this way, one in front, one behind. Back in our room, I went straight to the bedroom and locked the door. I was certain that, for now, I didn't want to see him or hear his voice. Or judge him. I looked down and touched my slightly protruding belly. Since learning I was pregnant, I hadn't slept well a single night, dreaming constantly of getting rid of this bastard child and sending the rapist to prison. At least when I thought it was Derek, that's what I'd wanted. But what if it was Ethan, whom I loved? Ethan was a doctor, highly intelligent, educated, meticulous, with OCD. He perfectly fit Officer Chen's description of the pervert who lived across from me, monitoring my every move. Why? For the first time in my life, I'd seriously offered my heart to a man, wanting to spend forever with him, only to discover he was a two-faced rapist. I couldn't understand it. Really couldn't understand. Ethan knew how much I liked him. If he'd wanted me, I would never have refused. Why use such a humiliating method to sleep with me? Had I offended him? Was he getting revenge for Derek? Or was there some other reason? The intense emotional turmoil made my lower abdomen ache. I quickly forced myself to stay calm. Taking a deep breath, I didn't even change clothes before turning off the lights and forcing myself to sleep. That night, I slept restlessly, having one seamless nightmare after another. Good and bad dreams featuring Derek, Ethan, Ethan's dead girlfriend, my mother, and various random people in chaotic soap opera plots. Finally, I dreamed I miscarried. Ethan personally performed my abortion, then afterward brought the 3-month-old fetus to show me, saying coldly that I deserved it before walking away without looking back. The dream was so vivid that I woke up in a cold sweat. I held my stomach, still shaken, with tears streaming down my face. Outside, I could hear faint street vendor calls. Looking toward the balcony, I noticed the sliding door was closed. I didn't think I'd closed it last night. So who had come in to close it? Obviously. This made my already dark mood even worse. Though I'd often thought how great it would be if this bastard child were Ethan's, discovering this possibility was real made it completely unacceptable. What did he think I was? Did he really love me? Why did he treat me this way? These chaotic thoughts trapped me in a dead end, leaving me breathless. I took a deep breath and packed my luggage. This sweet romantic getaway would have to end early. I couldn't continue this fake charade. After hastily stuffing clothes into my suitcase, I booked the earliest flight home on my phone. I couldn't keep deceiving myself. I needed the truth. After booking my ticket, I went to wash up. Looking at my pale reflection and dark circles that makeup couldn't hide, I was startled. Even when I'd learned about being assaulted and couldn't sleep for days, I'd never looked this bad. After washing up, I didn't bother with makeup, just put on lipstick, wore sunglasses, and dragged my suitcase toward the door. As expected, Ethan was waiting outside. He wore the same clothes from yesterday, wrinkled t-shirt, messy hair. He should have looked disheveled, but instead had a kind of handsome, decadent appeal. I wanted to slap myself. Julia Reed, even now you're still attracted to his looks. Ethan saw my suitcase and paused. Julia. Ethan, did you ever love me? My brain short-circuited, and I asked that question again. Yes. Ethan still answered without hesitation. Hearing this, I laughed bitterly. I regretted asking as soon as the words left my mouth. What was the point of dwelling on this now? I took a deep breath. I booked a flight. I'm going back first. Without waiting for Ethan's response, I pulled my suitcase and left. 2 hours later, I boarded the plane. Ethan had followed me. First class, I spotted him immediately. Our seats weren't together, and Ethan made no move to switch. Maybe because I hadn't slept well, I felt drowsy after takeoff and dozed off against the window. Half awake, I heard Ethan's voice. When I woke up, I had a blanket over me, but everything else was normal. I took a taxi home. Dropping my suitcase by the door, I threw off my jacket and collapsed on the soft sofa, grabbing a pillow and closing my eyes for a nap. Even an iron constitution couldn't handle this kind of stress, especially for a delicate pregnant woman. Maybe because things couldn't get worse, or maybe because familiar surroundings gave me security, I slept peacefully. Waking up, I opened my contacts and reluctantly called Derek. Julia? Derek's voice was cautious as always. Ethan is your cousin, right? I cut straight to the chase. Derek fell silent. This silence made me laugh. Ethan also knew you and I dated? He didn't know at first. Derek finally managed to say, "Did you stalk me after we broke up?" Derek was quiet for a long time. That time at the restaurant, I really did see you by coincidence. Now it was my turn to be silent. Derek meant he'd accidentally seen his ex-girlfriend with his cousin, felt jealous, took a photo and sent it to me. That voice message I'd considered psychotic was just him trying to annoy me. And I'd hastily condemned him based on those 2 messages. Then why did you propose to me? And admit the baby was yours? I really wanted to marry you. Peak simp behavior, willingly becoming a stepfather. Derek's actions left me speechless. Regarding exes, I'd always cut ties cleanly, never looking back. Derek was one of my quickest breakups. How had he fallen so deep in such a short time? Then again, wasn't I the same? I'd fallen for Ethan at first sight, willingly chasing after him. After confirming my suspicions through Derek, I hung up and blocked all his contacts. Then I changed clothes, grabbed my purse, and left. I took a taxi to a private hospital. I remembered my therapist saying paternity testing was possible without abortion. At the hospital, I handed the DNA technician 2 carefully wrapped hairs and had them extract genetic material from my fetus. That morning, when leaving the inn, for some inexplicable reason, I'd found 2 of Ethan's hairs on our bed. I didn't want to make assumptions and repeat my mistakes, Whoever this baby's father was, I needed definitive results today. Testing would take at least 6 hours. I paid extra for expedited results. During the wait, I had nowhere to go and sat in the hospital corridor. Those 6 hours felt eternal. Every minute and second was torture. Every doctor passing the genetics lab would see me sitting alone and suggest I go home to wait for a phone call with results. I shook my head. Going home would just be more sitting. I had to see the test results with my own eyes. To pass time, I called my mother. She always kept better hours than me, especially as she aged. By now, she'd be in bed with her beauty sleep. "Mom, why are you calling at this hour?" I wanted to ask, do you really not know who my father is? I'd grown up without knowing my father. Mom had raised me independently, providing all my material needs and maternal love, but never mentioned who my father was. "You're this old and still can't get over it?" I pressed my lips together, saying nothing. After a pause, I told her the truth. "Mom, I'm pregnant." Silence on the other end. "Are you going to abort it?" Mom had never interfered with my dating, only emphasizing protection and avoiding unwanted pregnancy. I'd followed this rule well all these years. Until now. I'd gotten pregnant with no memory of it happening. And here I sat alone in a hospital waiting for paternity results. With things this far along, I had no idea how to handle this baby. Hearing my hesitation, Mom sighed, "If you want it, keep it. Life is short, enjoy yourself. Don't be wishy-washy." Mom's words, though brief, were deeply comforting. I understand. Sleep well. I won't keep you up. Come home when you have time. You ungrateful child haven't visited me in ages. I'll come for Mid-Autumn Festival. After hanging up, I leaned against the wall, lost in thought. Eventually, the genetics doctor approached with test results. "Ms. Reed, the DNA match is 99. 99. Hearing this, I took the paper with shaking hands and read it carefully. The results confirmed a paternal relationship. Ethan was my baby's biological father. Holding that document, I left the hospital after midnight. Late autumn brought strong winds and few people on the streets. Being a private hospital, there weren't many taxis waiting outside. I stood there nearly half an hour before flagging one down. I reached my building complex around 3 a.m. Exhausted physically and mentally, I pressed the elevator button and leaned against it, my head buzzing with white noise. Exiting the elevator, I found someone standing by my door. Hearing movement, the person turned around. It was Ethan. He'd been there for who knows how long. Cigarette butts littered the ground. Seems like this doctor who only smoked when exhausted after surgery had abandoned all pretense. I silently stared at him for 2 seconds, then asked quietly, "Do you have anything to explain?" Ethan saw the hospital paperwork in my hand and understood what I'd done. He opened his mouth. "No." Hearing this, I smiled bitterly and turned to unlock my door. Ethan followed me inside without my stopping him. He actually had my house key. I didn't know why he'd been waiting outside. Was this to maintain his gentleman image? But he'd already done far worse things. What was the point now? 0. 6. Inside, I poured myself water. Seeing he wasn't going to speak, I went to shower. I wasn't worried about Ethan harming me further. I didn't understand his behavior or fetishes, but he wasn't some murderous psychopath. Otherwise, when I'd mentioned aborting the baby the night he proposed, he could have agreed. The baby would have been gone long ago. Dead men tell no tales. After my shower, feeling cleaner but exhausted, I lost all desire to communicate. Glancing at Ethan sitting dazed on the sofa, I said flatly, "Ethan, let's break up. I'll handle the baby myself. I'm tired. Do whatever you want." I yawned and headed for my bedroom. "Julia," Ethan called out. I paused slightly. Don't you have secrets you'd never want to tell anyone? I pressed my lips together and looked at him coldly. I have secrets I don't want to tell you, but that's to avoid hurting you. What about you? What unavoidable reason did you have for hiding secrets from me? Was it also to avoid hurting me? Yes. To pursue you, I hid part of my nature and tried to become what you'd like, but that was just a dating strategy. Even if you discovered it and got hurt, it's only a moral issue. Your behavior is criminal, you know that, right? Since you wanted to hide it, why did you always unconsciously leave clues? Full of holes? That doesn't match your meticulous personality. Ethan was speechless, his lips pale. I was tired of seeing Ethan's expression, as if he were the victim. We knew each other, and I was the one who pursued you. Misjudging you is my fault. I really can't bring myself to send you to prison personally. I'll abort the baby. Now go. We never need to see each other again. I headed for my room. The moment my hand touched the doorknob, Ethan rushed forward to stop me, holding me tightly, burying his face in my shoulder. His body trembled slightly, as if afraid that letting go would make me disappear. Julia, don't do this. Give me a chance to make things right, okay? Ethan reeked of cigarettes. I tried to struggle free, but couldn't. He only held tighter. His trembling and pleading voice made me soften despite myself, and I uncontrollably asked, why? Ethan, why did you treat me that way? Ethan didn't answer, his whole being radiating deep despair. Feeling his emotions confused me greatly. The secret he'd never tell anyone, did it not refer to what he'd done to me? I was clearly the victim, so why did he seem more desperate than me? We stayed like this for a while. Unable to break free, I just let it happen. Ethan regained his composure and released me. I'm sorry, Julia. I hurt you. Don't hate me. I'll give you justice. I'll go now. It's late, rest well. Me. Ethan left. After dropping that cryptic line that night, he never appeared again. Besides being completely confused, I had no idea how to make sense of this. My vacation wasn't over, but I had no heart for work. After hiding at home for a week, Officer Chen called again. He said he had something to tell me and wanted to meet in person. I guessed what he wanted to discuss and agreed to meet to put this matter to rest. We met at a quiet cafe. Ms. Reed, are you okay? I shook my head and managed a polite smile. Officer Chen noticed I hadn't terminated the pregnancy and sighed, I see you're planning to keep the baby. I looked at him suspiciously, wondering how he'd reached that conclusion. Instead of answering my confusion, Officer Chen dropped an even bigger bombshell. I called to check your Dr. Hath. Mitchell hasn't been to work in a long time. I stared wide-eyed. That's impossible. He only took 5 days of vacation. He should have returned to work by now. He's currently receiving psychological treatment at a private facility and has submitted his resignation to the hospital. What? Officer Chen, what happened? Officer Chen hesitantly looked at me and handed over a file folder. This is information I investigated privately. I thought it might help you. I frowned as I read the contents, my eyes widening in disbelief as I looked at Officer Chen. Officer Chen pressed his lips together and nodded slightly. I shouldn't be telling you this. These files are confidential. I'm violating protocol by showing them to you, but seeing how happy you looked when mentioning Dr. Mitchell, I couldn't bear to see you two end like this. These are classified documents that I have to take back after you read them. Please keep this information confidential. I clenched my fists and barely whispered agreement. Do you know which facility Ethan is at? Officer Chen shook his head. I can't access that information. I don't remember leaving the cafe, only that, when I came to, I was standing outside Ethan's apartment. I knew he probably wasn't home anymore. Looking at the sophisticated electronic lock, I pressed my lips together and used my thumb to try opening the door. Beep. Welcome home. The door opened. Ethan hadn't deleted my fingerprint. The interior looked exactly as when I'd left. Who could have known that someone as brilliant as Ethan had endured such inhuman treatment as a child? Ethan was adopted by his parents at age 12. Before that, he'd been an orphan raised in a social welfare institution. A wealthy businessman who donated to the orphanage had taken a liking to 2 children, a boy and girl. 8-year-old Ethan was one of them. After taking Ethan and the girl home, the seemingly benevolent businessman revealed his true nature. He drugged their drinks. Both children were tortured by the businessman for an entire week. When finally rescued, neither had an inch of uninjured skin. The girl, trying to protect Ethan, suffered uterine rupture at such a young age. After barely surviving, she was left permanently infertile. The doctors who saved them were Ethan's adoptive parents. Ethan spent 2 years in therapy before beginning to recover. The files were brief to protect the minors involved, but I could imagine what 2 helpless, fragile children had endured. The files sealed both victims' names, but I intuited that the girl was Ethan's deceased fiancé. The records mentioned that Ethan remained psychologically unstable after leaving therapy, requiring regular counseling. I didn't know how he'd managed to disguise himself as such a gentle gentleman all these years. But I knew that after such trauma, true healing was impossible. So what he did to me? Was it PTSD? Only Ethan could answer these questions. I scrolled through my contacts, looking at the number I'd labeled Ethan Forever, pressed my lips together, and called. The phone rang endlessly with no answer. Unwilling to give up, I sent him a message. I'm at your place. I want to see you. I waited all day, calling repeatedly, but got no response. As evening approached and the doorbell rang, I jumped up from the living room carpet. Was it Ethan? I ran barefoot to the door, cautiously checking through the peephole. Seeing who it was, I opened the door disappointedly. It was Derek. Derek held a thermos and didn't seem surprised to see me. Did you block my number? I couldn't get through. I pursed my lips, not wanting to explain, what do you want? My aunt asked me to bring you some food, so I came. I paused. Aunt. That was Ethan's mother? Ignoring what Derek brought, I grabbed his arm. Can you give me your aunt's phone number? Derek winced from my grip. I quickly let go. Derek looked at my haggard appearance. His simp instincts kicked in, and he couldn't refuse, eat first, then I'll give it to you. I glanced at him, pressed my lips together, and opened the thermos. Without looking at the contents, I started eating with chopsticks. Derek was alarmed by my mechanical eating. Julia, don't eat so fast. I ignored him, finishing everything in a few bites, before looking at him expectantly. Derek hesitated. Julia? My eyes immediately reddened, tears falling without any buildup. Derek, please. Derek, seeing me cry for the first time, frantically tried to wipe my tears. Don't cry. My aunt probably won't answer now, but how about I take you to see her tomorrow? I pushed further and shook my head. No good. I need to see her now. Derek looked conflicted. Wait, let me call and ask. I waited patiently. Derek went to the balcony to make his call, while I went to the bathroom and threw up everything I'd just eaten. The soup had pepper, which always made me nauseous. I'd forced it down earlier to appease Derek. Derek finished his call and heard me vomiting, getting anxious and knocking on the bathroom door. Julia, what's wrong? Open up. After throwing up bile, I rinsed my mouth and flushed away the mess before opening the door. Are you okay? I shook my head, just morning sickness. Did your aunt agree to see me? He nodded with a complex expression. I grabbed my phone. Let's go then. Derek drove me for half an hour to an upscale, quiet nursing facility. I'd suspected during the ride. Derek kept glancing at me through the rearview mirror, seeming to want to say something. I ignored him. Even with thousands of questions, I only wanted answers from Ethan. The facility had beautiful, soothing surroundings. After walking 5 or 6 minutes, we reached our destination. Staff stopped Derek but looked at me. Ms. Terry. Read, Doctor. Mitchell is waiting for you. I nodded, unconsciously gripping my phone, and stepped inside. Entering, I frantically searched for Ethan and saw someone in a wheelchair by the floor-to-ceiling window, back turned to me. It was Ethan. Hearing movement, Ethan turned his wheelchair to face me with his familiar gentle smile. You came. How? How had he become like this? In less than 10 days, Ethan had become gaunt, with bandages on his wrists. I ran to kneel beside him, immediately rolling up his sleeves. Seeing the dense scars on his arms, tears flowed uncontrollably. Ethan, is this the justice you promised me? Ethan pulled down his sleeves and wiped my tears, smiling. I thought you wouldn't come see me anymore. His casual attitude toward his own life infuriated me. Ethan, if you dare die like this, I'll never forgive you. 6. Ethan's smile faded slightly as he looked at me gently. Why do this? Why be so extreme? I was hurt by you but never thought of dying. Why you? I was furious, looking at him like I could breathe fire. Julia, I can't control myself. Faced with my questioning, Ethan explained quietly. Understanding the reason, I was momentarily speechless. Seeing my reaction, Ethan wasn't surprised. I heard from my mom that Officer Chen met with you today. Did he tell you something? I fell silent. I guessed right. I hadn't expected Ethan to be so perceptive, deducing the reason just from knowing I'd met with Officer Chen. I assume Officer Chen showed you the files from that businessman scandal years ago. Sophie was the girl with me then. After rescue, we spent 2 years in therapy. My parents hired tutors for us to self-study middle and high school. Eventually, doctors suggested returning to campus familiar. Innocent school environments might help us return to normal life. Sophie was beautiful. Starting school, she attracted lots of male attention, but she feared anyone's touch except mine, even other girls. And I wanted to attack anyone who came near me. To hide our abnormalities, Sophie and I were in the same class, sat together, and got into the same university. Everyone said we were dating, calling us the perfect couple. We didn't correct them. It felt nice being misunderstood this way. When we were old enough, I'd marry her. But some things, once they exist, can never be erased. We had regular psychological evaluations. To pass them, we gradually learned to hide our emotions, appearing increasingly normal in public. But Sophie still chose suicide 2 years ago to end her suffering. My whole body trembled uncontrollably, unable to imagine how they'd survived all these years. Ethan looked at me tenderly, touching my face. The first time I met you, I knew you'd been Derek's girlfriend and that you'd broken up quickly. Julia, I knew about your dating history and what you were really like. I envied how freely and boldly you lived. Maybe because I envied you, I wanted to be closer to your life, so I rented an apartment across from yours using Derek's identity. When you imitated Sophie to pursue me, I found it both helpless and amusing, yet didn't know how to explain. I knew I wasn't worthy of you and hadn't planned to accept your pursuit, but I couldn't help wanting to see you. That night, I'd performed surgery on another abused minor and couldn't control my emotions. He came out. I looked up at him, my throat feeling blocked, unable to speak. I returned to the rental and saw your lights still on, inexplicably wanting to see you. You hadn't given me door access then, but I'd seen your phone passcode and tried it. The door opened. You were very drunk, lying on the sofa. Seeing me, you smiled and acted cute, asking why I was so hard to pursue, why I wouldn't accept you. I couldn't control myself. I bit my lip, so I was the one who seduced you? The supposed assault was just drunken sex that I'd forgotten? This. Ethan shook his head gently. No, I took advantage of you. I felt like crying. If he'd told me the truth, then I probably would have happily pulled him in for a sober repeat. We'd put ourselves through this hell over such a misunderstanding. When you said he came out, do you have multiple personalities? Yes. Do you sense each other? Know about each other's existence? Yes. Ethan met my eyes directly, as if afraid of seeing fear. I knew exactly what I was doing. What was that look for? Did he think I'd see him as a freak? This idiot. I couldn't help but explode. You fucking moron. Why didn't you tell me the truth earlier? I almost really wanted to end things with you. Ethan stared at me blankly. You aren't angry? Who says I'm not angry? I'm furious right now. Look what you've done to yourself. All these scars, no meat on your bones, you're hideous. If I'd seen you like this initially, I definitely wouldn't have pursued you. I examined his body with heartbreak. This idiot had really given himself no mercy. Both arms were cut up. Would this affect his future surgeries? Julia. Shut up. I don't want to talk right now. You better get well fast and get out of this place. I'm carrying your bastard child. You better know how to take responsibility. I don't want to get married while pregnant. Hearing my words, Ethan couldn't help but smile. Okay. Epilogue. 6 months later. The morning sun streamed through the windows of our new apartment as I sat at the kitchen table, one hand on my very round belly, the other holding a cup of decaf coffee that Ethan had insisted on making me. She's kicking again, I announced as our daughter decided to practice her soccer moves against my ribs. Ethan looked up from his medical journals. He'd returned to work part-time at a smaller clinic that specialized in trauma therapy and smiled that genuine smile I'd grown to love even more than his old practiced one. She knows her daddy's voice, he said, coming over to place his hands on my stomach. Almost immediately, the kicking calmed down. There we go, princess. Let mommy eat her breakfast. I rolled my eyes but couldn't hide my smile. Ever since we'd found out we were having a girl, Ethan had become impossibly protective and ridiculously sweet. The pregnancy had been his idea of redemption, I think a way to prove to himself that he could nurture life instead of being haunted by trauma. Doctor. Martina says you're cleared for full surgery rotations next month, I said, watching his face carefully. We'd learned to communicate about everything now, even the difficult stuff. Ethan nodded slowly. I think I'm ready. The therapy has helped, and having you both gives me something to focus on besides the past. It hadn't been easy. Those first few months after the truth came out were brutal. Ethan had spent 8 weeks in intensive therapy, learning to manage his dissociative episodes and PTSD triggers. I'd spent that time in my own therapy, processing everything that had happened and figuring out how to love someone with such complex trauma. We'd almost broken up twice, once when I couldn't handle the weight of his psychological issues, and once when he convinced himself I'd be better off without him. But somehow, we'd found our way through it. Any word from Derek? Ethan asked, settling back into his chair. I snorted. He sent another baby gift yesterday. A pink teddy bear this time. I think he's still hoping I'll suddenly realize he's my soulmate. Poor guy, Ethan said, but he was grinning. The jealousy and possessiveness that had once consumed him had transformed into something healthier, confidence in our relationship. My phone buzzed with a text from my mom, flying in tomorrow for the baby shower. Try not to go into labor before I get there. Mom's coming tomorrow, I told Ethan. She's bringing her latest boyfriend. Apparently, he's different from the others. They always are, Ethan laughed. He'd grown fond of my mother's chaotic love life, finding it amusing rather than scandalous. As I watched him laugh, really laugh, not the careful, controlled version from before, I felt that familiar flutter of gratitude mixed with love. We'd both been broken in different ways, but somehow our jagged edges fit together. "I love you," I said suddenly, the words still feeling new and precious between us. Ethan's eyes softened, and he reached across the table to take my hand. "I love you too. Both of you." Our daughter kicked again, as if she approved. "Should we tell her the whole story when she's older?" I asked. It was something we'd discussed in therapy, how much to share about our complicated beginning. "We'll tell her that sometimes adults make mistakes and hurt each other, but real love means working through the hard stuff together," Ethan said. "And that she was created from love, even if it took us a while to figure out what that meant." I squeezed his hand. "I can live with that version." Outside, I could hear the city waking up, car horns, sirens, the rumble of the subway. Normal life happening all around us. For the first time in longer than I could remember, normal felt pretty perfect. "What are you thinking about?" Ethan asked, noticing my distant expression. "Just how different everything is now. A year ago, if someone had told me I'd be sitting here, pregnant, and planning a life with a man who..." I trailed off, not wanting to rehash the difficult parts. "Who assaulted you while having a psychological break?" Ethan finished quietly. We'd learned not to dance around the truth, no matter how uncomfortable. Yeah, 0, 6. And that I'd be completely, stupidly happy about it. "Are you?" "Happy, I mean?" I looked at him, really looked at him. The shadows under his eyes were gone. His hands were steady. The careful mask he'd worn for so many years had been replaced by something real and imperfect and beautiful. "Yeah," I said. "I really am." Our daughter chose that moment to deliver a particularly enthusiastic kick, making us both laugh. "She's going to be trouble," Ethan predicted. "With our genetics?" "Absolutely." I grinned. "I can't wait." As if on cue, my water broke. "Or maybe we won't have to wait much longer," I added, looking down at the puddle forming under my chair. Ethan went into full doctor mode, calm and efficient, but I could see the excitement and terror warring in his eyes. "Okay, let's get you to the hospital. Do you have your bag?" "Ethan," I said, grabbing his arm as another contraction hit. "She's really coming." "Yeah," he said, his voice full of wonder. "She really is." 3 hours later, Sophia Reed Mitchell made her dramatic entrance into the world, screaming her tiny lungs out and immediately calming down the moment Ethan held her. "She knows her daddy," I whispered, exhausted but euphoric. Ethan's eyes were full of tears as he looked down at our daughter, this perfect little person we'd created from such an imperfect beginning. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what? 0, 6. For not giving up on us. For seeing something in me worth saving." I reached up to touch his face. "You saved yourself, Ethan. I just stuck around for the show." Sophia opened her eyes then, dark blue like her father's, and looked directly at him with that serious newborn expression. "Hi, Princess," Ethan whispered. "I'm your dad. I promise I'm going to do better by you than the world did by me." And watching him hold our daughter with such gentle reverence, I knew he would. Some love stories start with meet-cutes and first dates. Ours started with lies, trauma, and a misunderstanding that nearly destroyed us both. But as I watched my husband, because, yes, we'd gotten married 3 months ago in a small ceremony with just my mother and his parents introduce himself to our daughter, I couldn't imagine it any other way. We were messy and complicated and far from perfect. But we were real. And we were ours. And sometimes that's exactly enough. The end.